Okay, now we're going to talk about where to use personas. So ideally, you're leveraging personas every day in your day-to-day marketing in a bunch of different ways, right? They're not dead somewhere in a Google Drive folder. And here's an example I pulled from Clearbit, and I think it's a great example because they're using personas in a bunch of different ways. In one example, you see it on their website, right? So similar to Loom, they have kind of a section, role-based use case section where you can kind of drill down in that way. There's also some examples of paid search. So that is how demand gen is now leveraging the personas, right? Figuring out how to leverage it in paid search. There's also a downloadable. So again, the demand gen team using those personas. Free weekly visitor report tool. Obviously that's targeted at a marketer persona. Again, demand gen team. You also see a sales email here targeted at a marketer persona. So, maybe this email is written by marketing, or maybe this is like an SDR who went in, looked at the personas and crafted this copy himself, right? And there's also obviously these content marketing, right? So coming up with different categories, content topics that speak to these different personas. So how do you do this? The main thing to remember is to make sure your copy aligns with the right persona and isn't watered down by trying to speak to multiple personas at once, right? So if you think even about a sequence or a journey, right? The ad, the landing page, the content that comes downstream from those things, it all needs to really speak to one persona, their specific pain points, their specific, desires and outcomes. And if you're muddling it with other personas, it's not going to be as powerful. So if you find you're clumping personas together, think about how you can further segment. Last thing we'll talk about with personas is mapping your sales paths to different personas. So, mapping your buyer journey effectively. So the final thing we'll talk about in personas is mapping sales paths for your personas. So the main idea here is to understand and map the buyer journey. And here's an example Olivine did with Envoy. So, high-level buyer journey for an SVP of security kind of looks like, okay, well, they click on a customer story video we did. After that, they attend a security-focused sales demo. From there, sales follows up with a security white paper that they read. And then from there, they're invited to a security webinar. So that's just a high-level example of what that could look like. So how do you do that for yourself? Well, firstly, you want to be able to create kind of a high-level template or outline that lets you really kind of map out and view what the buyer journey looks like and helps you humanize and add context to it. So for example, if you're looking at actions, well, the first trigger as an action could be they see an ad, or they hear someone on a podcast, or someone at a conference. The next step or action could be, passively looking at a website or checking a G2 review, right? And so on and so forth. Olivine pro tip here. So when it comes to creating your sales deck, you want to be able to create different slides for different personas. So depending on who you're speaking to further along in the sales cycle, when you're having these sales conversations, you want to be able to plug in or switch out different slides that then speak to those specific personas, their specific pain points, their specific use cases, and so forth. So that's a great way to be able to do that quickly, just creating these different slides. And that's a wrap on personas.